Where are the Democrats going with this? If Mondami is the face of the Democrats on the East Coast and Katie Porter is the face on the West Coast, I don't know if that's great politically for that party. Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor f*** in the Oval Office last week.
It looks like the Democratic Party is moving closer to socialism, and Bill Maher thinks that direction could seriously hurt them. The outspoken comedian didn't hold back. He warned that leaning into socialism could push voters away and put 2028 at risk. His take was sharp, direct, and hard to ignore. If you want honest, no-filter political commentary, hit subscribe and check out this full breakdown.
The party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won. In districts, Trump also won. All moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times, which did so much to promote woke politics, now says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win. And Democrats should recognize the party moved too far left on social issues after Obama left office.
Bill Maher doesn't hold back. He warns that if Democrats keep moving towards socialism, they could end up helping Republicans more than hurting them. In his view, using labels and pushing policies that many Americans see as extreme will only fire up conservative voters, bring the GOP closer together, and boost their chances of winning the presidency. Instead of growing their support, Maher believes Democrats might actually shrink it and hand Republicans a strong message to campaign on. His advice is simple but calculated: move back to the center. He thinks the Democratic National Committee should focus on practical, everyday issues that matter to moderates and independents, rather than trying to meet strict ideological expectations. For Maher, winning elections isn't about pleasing the loudest voices online. It's about connecting with a wider audience. If Democrats want a real shot in 2028, he believes a more balanced, moderate approach is the smarter way forward.
I know the kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century, a f***ing mess.
Bill Maher argues that socialism simply doesn't sell in the United States because many Americans are deeply skeptical of it. In his view, voters don't need a long history lesson. They've already seen how large-scale socialist systems have played out in other countries. He points to concerns like slow economic growth, shortages, and too much government control. Because of this, Maher believes a lot of Americans link socialism with instability, rather than success. Whether those comparisons are completely fair or not, he says the perception still matters a lot. And in politics, perception can decide everything. Maher also believes many voters are uncomfortable with policies that seem to give too much power to the government. After growing up with ideas like free markets and personal opportunity, people tend to be cautious about big ideological changes. Because of that mindset, he thinks openly supporting socialism could turn away swing voters. And in a close national election, even losing a small number of moderates could be enough to cost Democrats the White House.
It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening. Zoran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar.
Bill Maher points to what he sees as a real-world example playing out in New York, where some Democrats have backed candidates who openly identify as democratic socialists, including Mamdani. For Maher, this isn't just a local story. It's a glimpse of what could happen nationwide if the party keeps moving in that direction. He sees Mamdani's rise as part of a larger shift that may energize activists but could make moderate voters uneasy, the same voters who often decide elections. Maher argues that history offers a warning. In his view, candidates who lean too heavily into strong ideological labels can struggle to keep broad public trust over time. While Mamdani's long-term impact in New York is still unclear, Maher expects disappointment rather than major change. He believes results matter more than messaging, and if leaders don't deliver on their promises, voters will make their decision clear at the ballot box.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
That, Maher says, is where what he sees as the illusion begins. Many voters believe democratic socialist is very different from socialist, thinking the extra word softens or reshapes the idea. But critics like Maher argue the difference is mostly in the wording. In their view, adding democratic doesn't really change the core ideas. More government control, heavier redistribution, and a bigger role for the state in the economy. Supporters of democratic socialism say the term shows a commitment to reaching goals through democratic means, not authoritarian rule. But Maher argues that once those policies are put into practice, the results can end up looking very similar to traditional socialist systems. He believes labels can make ideas sound more acceptable at first, but they don't change how those ideas play out in real life. In the end, he says voters don't judge the name, they judge the outcome. And if the policies look like something Americans already distrust, rebranding won't protect Democrats from facing consequences at the ballot box.
I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism, but the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that?
Bill Maher also points to immigration as a major political weak spot. He says many voters lost confidence in Democratic leadership because they believed border control was weaker under Joe Biden. For those voters, border security wasn't just another policy issue, it was a test of leadership, order, and accountability. Maher argues that when people feel the system isn't under control, they start looking for other options, even if they don't fully agree with them. What worries him most is the idea that some democratic socialists are still pushing policies that voters may have already rejected at the ballot box. To him, that suggests the party hasn't fully learned from past outcomes. He warns that repeating the same strategy while expecting different results could backfire, especially in a closely divided country where perception can make all the difference between winning and losing.
Either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods. Governor-elect Spanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal! You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, Get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in. In 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that.
Bill Maher puts his advice to Democrats in very simple terms. Be normal. In his view, the party doesn't need big ideological shifts or culture war battles to win in 2028. What it needs is consistency, practical thinking, and a message that connects with everyday people. Maher has often criticized what he sees as overly woke rhetoric, saying it can push more voters away than it attracts. He believes most Americans aren't chasing ideological perfection or viral moments online. They're looking for stability, competence, and leaders who focus on real-life concerns, jobs, inflation, safety, and opportunity. When political messaging feels out of touch with daily life, Maher warns that voters either tune out or move on. His point isn't about giving up core values, but about how those values are presented and prioritized. To him, moderation isn't a weakness, it's a smart strategy. If Democrats want to reach more people, he says they need to sound like a party that represents mainstream America, not just its most vocal activists.
It seems to me that there are two pillars that this country is founded on. One is democracy, and one is capitalism, free markets. And it seems like one party wants to get rid of one, and the other party wants to get rid of the other. Right? The Republicans are not that, democracy is just not number one on their list. It just isn't. It isn't. It's behind Christianity and a few other things. And the Democrats, I mean, I read these, 74% are for democratic socialism. Only 16% favor capitalism. Is this going to be a country that I don't recognize in 5 to 10 years if we don't have these two pillars?
Bill Maher has expressed surprise at polls showing a significant number of Democrats open to socialism. He sees that level of support as politically risky, given how controversial the term still is in American politics. Maher points to socialism's historical baggage, citing countries where centralized economic systems faced inefficiency, stagnation, or declining living standards. Whether those examples are entirely fair or context-specific, he argues the perception alone can influence elections. In his view, many voters associate socialism with economic decline and fewer opportunities, a connection Republicans can easily use to portray Democrats as radical. He doesn't claim that every progressive policy leads to disaster, but he emphasizes that labels matter. Lean too far into an ideology many Americans distrust, and Democrats could hand their opponents a simple, powerful message, one that could sway the next national election.
Where are the Democrats going with this? If Mamdani is the face of the Democrats on the East Coast and Katie Porter is the face on the West Coast, I don't know if that's great politically for that party.
I don't see the rise of figures like Mamdani and Katie Porter as a good sign for Democrats. Critics say their prominence points to a shift toward democratic socialism, which could turn off moderates and independents. Instead of expanding the party's reach, this shift may shrink its coalition and give Republicans an easy line of attack. The worry isn't just about individual politicians, it's about the overall direction of the party. When voters see a move away from practical solutions towards strict ideology, trust can erode. Some commentators even warn it could lead to long-term decline. Whether that happens remains to be seen, but the concern highlights an ongoing debate within the party about identity, electability, and future viability. Without striking the right balance, critics fear Democrats could lose their competitive edge over time.
These democratic socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegates suffer sensory overload. And also, and I'm not joking, they were told not to be wearing, any aggressive scents.
Please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people.
Oh, for f***'s sake.
Bill Maher didn't hold back in criticizing what he sees as the Democratic Party's growing obsession with woke politics. He argues it's more than just a cultural trend. It's a serious political risk. According to Maher, when leaders focus more on symbolic battles and niche ideological debates than on everyday issues, many Americans feel left out. Frustration quietly builds among voters who simply want practical solutions to real-world problems. What concerns Maher most is the combination of an openly socialist economic message with aggressive cultural progressivism. Whether fair or not, that creates a perception of extremism, which can be politically dangerous. Elections are often won in the middle, and when a party drifts too far from what most voters consider mainstream, its appeal shrinks. For Maher, the path to success isn't doubling down on extremes. It's recalibrating before voter dissatisfaction turns into defeat at the ballot box. He warns that Democrats risk losing public trust if they move too far from the center. Instead, he believes moderation, pragmatism, and relatability, not ideology, win elections. If the party wants to remain competitive in 2028 and beyond, Maher says it must reconnect with mainstream voters and focus on the issues that matter most to them. And that wraps up today's video. If you found it helpful, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.